Hello and welcome to an Excel tutorial. Today we're going to cover something a little different. When it comes to working with a spreadsheet software, there are always going to be aspects of it that are tedious and boring. And part of stepping up to that next level, like being able to bend a computer to your will and do the things that you want to be able to do with a computer, to really open up the functionality of the computer, that next step is to learn how to automate those boring tasks. Anything that you find that you're doing repetitively, or anything you find that you're having to do the same sequence of steps over and over again, and that's going to happen, that may be a good time to create a macro. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about macros. We're going to create a couple of macros, and we're going to edit the code that results from creating those macros. So for this tutorial, we're not going to learn how to do a lot of coding per se, but we are going to look at the code and see if we can't figure out what the code is trying to do. And I think that's the first step towards kind of becoming comfortable with using these advanced higher functionality. So what we have here is a file that has in it a couple of tables of data with some salary information for a fictional company that we're working on. We have 4 different sheets with different amounts of data, but they do have the same columns in each table. So first thing I'm going to do is save a new copy of this in this folder. We're going to go here. We're going to call it a run through. That's what I'm doing, is I'm running through it for you. Okay, so macros are, there should be like a little button down here that allows you to record macros. If it's not there, you can right-click down here on the bottom bar and turn on macro recording, which is somewhere around here. There it is, macro recording. And that's this little button right here. Alternatively, you will want to have the Developer tab activated. And in order to do that, you can right-click on the Home tab, click Customize the ribbon, and then look down here for the Developer tab and make sure it's checked. When you check that, then it will appear up here. It's disabled by default, so you won't have access to the Developer tab. And the Developer tab has tools for recording macros. So I'm going to show you the wrong way to do this first, and I'll show you why it doesn't work. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start in the developer mode. I'm going to start by recording a macro. Alternately, you can push this button down here, which maybe I'll just do that. Click this button down here on the bottom. It's not doing anything. Record macro. Yeah, we'll just use this one. I'm just going to call it macro 1, and I'm going to leave everything else blank. Store this macro in this workbook. Click OK. Okay, so now I'm recording. Now the macro is recording in the background. Everything I do, every change I make to this sheet will be recorded as part of my macro. So let's say I want to do some formatting on this. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, okay, well, let's change the column widths. So we'll highlight all 3 columns. We'll double click to resize everything. Then let's say I'll select column A1, and maybe I'll give that one the title style. So I'll make it a little bigger. Let's say I want to highlight these column headings, and well, let's make them another color. Let's make them bold. B for bold. Let's put a bottom border on those cells so that you can see that. And finally, I want to add commas to these numbers. So I want them to have the comma number style. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select them. And this is where we're making our first mistake. And so I'll show you how to rectify this mistake when we go back through it. What will happen here, I'm going to do this real quick. I'm going to add my commas. I'm going to reduce the number of decimal places. And then I'm going to say, we're done. That's good. Macro completed. So let's stop recording the macro. The macro has been created. And everything looks fine. We're good to go. except if I try to apply that to the next sheet. Watch what happens. Notice this sheet has more data. If I go to my developer tab and I run that macro, again, I go into macros, there's my macro 1, I hit run, this is what it does. It doesn't fix the number formatting on all of this. So that's not what we want. We want something that's going to dynamically adjust to select all the data in the table, but not any more. So let's clear this all out. I'm going to clear all my formats. I'm going to readjust the column size so that that's part of our thing, and we'll do the same thing over here. We'll clear our formats, and then we'll grab the default width. This is just, I'm just resetting everything here. There we go. Okay, so let's start over. Let's create a new macro. Go to our developer tab, record a macro. This time I'm going to call it format sheet. And then I'm actually going to give it a shortcut key. I'm going to say Control L will be my shortcut key, stored in this workbook. You can add a description if you want. Click OK. So now we're recording. And first thing I'm going to do is resize my columns, as I did before. Done. Next, I'm going to format this as a title. And this is the part that you can follow along on, by the way. And you can pause as needed. I'm going to highlight this first row with these. And accent 2, Control B to make it bold. Add a bottom border. By the way, the bottom border is the default button here, so you don't actually need to open this to select bottom border. And now, what I'm going to do is select cell B4. So B4 only, and then to select all the numbers, I'm going to hold down some keyboard short. I'm going to do a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to hold Control Shift and down, and keep holding Control Shift, and then press the right arrow key as well. So that is dynamically going to change what cells are selected. So I'm pushing Control Shift down and Control Shift to the right, and that will select all the data, exactly the same as if I clicked and dragged through, except now when it records it in the macro, it will record it as as selecting all of the data that is available. And now I can add commas, I can reduce the decimal places, and I can stop recording my macro. Okay, now let's see what happens if I apply that macro here. And I can use this keyboard shortcut that I assigned, Control L, and it applies all that formatting to this table. Do it over here, Control L, nice. Do it over here, Control L, beautiful. So now let's take a look at what we did. We'll go to the developer tab, we'll go to macros, we'll take a look at our format sheet macro, and we'll click edit. And let's take a look at what, ignore this part up here. This is my, oh, that's the first macro that we did. We'll delete that one later. But this is the code for the one that we're using now. So the first thing it does is select all the columns A through C and auto-fit them. Perfect. Then we select column A1, give it the title style. Then we select A3 through C3, and we give it some formatting, you know, bottom borders, change the bold, change the font colors and things like that. Then finally we select, where is it? Yeah, so then we select cell B4, that's this cell right here, and then we do range select to down and to the right. So that's why it's selecting everything and then going to the right. That's the dynamic part. Up here, it's just selecting B4 through C8, and that is not going to get everything. So this is a better way to do things. And then this is the part where it's adding the number format. It's confusing syntax, but you don't need to know it. You just need to know that that's what it is. And that's it. That's the whole macro. So let's close this out, and let's do another one. Next thing I want to make is a macro that adds a chart. So let's select, let's start by recording a macro. So I'm on my first sheet here. I hit record macro. I'm going to call it make chart. I'm going to give it a keyboard shortcut. We'll do Control K this time, and we'll hit OK. And now we're recording. So the first thing we want to do is select the data that we want to make into a chart. So I'm going to start with the top cell, and then rather than selecting it with the mouse, which we know doesn't select all the data if there's a different amount on each chart, so we hit Control-Shift down and Control-Shift right. And that will dynamically select all the data, and that will make sure that the chart works correctly. Now we'll go to Insert. We'll go to this over here, which is your combo chart, Insert Combo Chart, and right-click that, or left-click that, and then we're going to do the Clustered Column Line Combo, and that will create this. And let's say we want to do a couple little tweaks and adjustments to this. Don't move the chart, by the way, because then it'll add unnecessary steps to our macro, which we don't necessarily want. So let's go ahead and start with this. Let's say we want to put the legend at the top. So let's go here, right-click this, click Format Legend, and we'll pop it up to the top. Next, let's say we want to change the color of these columns. So we'll right-click them. We'll change the fill color to something a little darker. Yeah, that's nice. Let's select all the columns again, and let's say we want to add data labels. That puts these numbers on them. And then we want to change the chart title. So let's double-click on that. And this is the Procurement Department chart. And then click away. And then we'll stop recording our macro. That's down here. Click. There we go. So our macro is done, but it's going to have some problems. If I try to do it here, it's not going to, it's going to, let's go to our developer. Let's use our new make chart macro, run it, and notice everything's fine except this is wrong. So let's try this again. Let's delete that. Let's go to our macros, make chart, and let's edit it in here, because this is neat. You actually kind of do need to go into this in order to make this work. You do need to go into the code. So this is the part that we're trying to deal with right here. We want to change this so that right now this is hard-coded to Procurement Department. Instead, we want this to grab the text out of cell A1 and make that our new title. So we can actually do that. And if you spend a little bit of time playing with VBA, you'll start to recognize little bits of syntax. You don't need to know everything about the language. You just need to know the little things that work. And once you become familiar with them, you'll become more and more comfortable with it. And in this case, what we want is something that looks kind of like this. So the range function allows us to select a particular range. So, or get some value out of that range. And that's kind of what we want here. So I could copy and paste this down, but I'm going to type it by hand. I want to say range with a capital R, left parenthesis, and then in quotation marks, I put cell A1. That's the cell I want. Close the parentheses. And now I don't just want cell A1, I want the value that's in it. So how we do that is with a period and then the word value. And notice it gives you a little tooltip here that allows you to kind of fill it in and see what you want. I also want to put this here. I'm not entirely certain why, but this is like it's like you have to change it in both places. Like this is the chart title, but then this is the text in the chart title. I'm not sure why. Everything underneath here we don't need. So so this part, so you'll get this selection.format text frame 2. We don't need that, or we need that, but everything underneath it where it's doing this unnecessary formatting, we can get rid of up until this last end with. Delete, and then we're good here. Let's rerun the macro here. Macros, make chart. I could use the keyboard shortcut, run. And there's our chart. Let's add one more kind of interesting tweak to the code. Let's go to our macro, make chart, edit. let's make it so that it won't run if there's nothing on this chart. If there is no chart, we don't want it to run. So, so that, you know, if you get zealous and you're doing Control K everywhere, it won't actually do it. This is actually a little bit tricky. Let's do it together. It starts with if. So if there's nothing in this chart, let's say if cell A3 does not equal the word position, because that's what this is. This is a salary breakdown, so the first field of our table is always going to be position. So if range A3 dot value does not equal, that's what this means, this little double angle bracket does not equal the word position, and also if cell A4 is empty, so that's like if I do have that top column but there's no actual data in it, let's also account for that. So we'll say or if range A4 equals, why is it working? There we go. Equals empty, like a 2 quotation marks is an empty string. There's nothing in them, so it's considered empty. Then what we want to do, oops, yeah, I forgot. Then, so you kind of do it, it's kind of like a sentence. You're saying if this is true, or this is true, if either one of those two things is true, then exit this sub. So a sub, this is the sub. Sub is called make chart. Sub is short for subroutine. So that's how Visual Basic defines what we call a function. It uses this word sub to create it. So we're going to say if this is true, then just exit the subroutine. We're going to go away. We're not going to run anything else. If both of these things are false, we want to run everything else. So we say else, run everything else. And then to finish it off, we have to go down here and type end if. So that's like the bookend for this. So if this is true, do this. Otherwise, do all this. And then this is the part that we stop doing the if statement. The if statement's over once we hit this part. So you can actually kind of have little nested if statements, and you can have all sorts of little things, and it'll always do the things between the if and the end if. So, so there we are. That's our function completed. Our macro is done. Let's close this, and let's test it over here. Let's go to the next sheet. We'll hit Control K. Boom. There's our new chart. We'll go to the sales sheet. Control K. Boom. And let's add a blank one and see if it tries. Control K, nothing happens. So that's how we can do little error checking things, little tweaks. And I'm not expecting you guys to know exactly how all this stuff works. What I am asking you to do is follow along on these steps and see if you can see the kind of like hidden mechanisms that are going on here. See if any parts of it make sense to you. Like if you can see a little bit of the internal logic, even if you don't know what all the syntax, the parentheses, the angle brackets, the quotation marks, and where they all go, if you copy exactly what I have, pause this video, copy what I have, it'll work. And then you can like go on in the next tutorial. We'll do a little bit more advanced stuff, and then eventually you'll be able to like, oh, I know how I can do this other thing that I have to do in Excel. I could use VBA to automate this task that I really hate. Or, I mean, all you really need to be able to do is record the macro. That's plenty. To do really simple automated tasks, you can just record a macro, and you don't even need to look at the code. Just record it and then run it over and over again whenever you want. But that's it. That's everything for this tutorial, and I hope you found it interesting, if not actually useful. And we'll see you in the next one.